Back online. See the visuals that are coming in from the Chorus Bank Arena, Sydney. Australian Prime Minister Anthony Albanese accompanying Indian Prime Minister Narendra Modi here. It's a jam-packed day for Indian Prime Minister Narendra Modi. This is the final leg of his three-nation visit. He's currently in Sydney, where in a short while from now he will be addressing the Indian Diaspora, a community event that's being held to welcome the Indian Prime Minister. Now, this morning, Narendra Modi met Australian CEOs, many eminent personalities as well. It's important to note here that apart from being a Quad grouping, a member of the Quad grouping, India is also Australia's largest source of skilled migrants and the second largest source of international students. Thousands have flocked in to see Indian Prime Minister Narendra Modi at the Olympic Park Arena event. It's attracting many supporters from across Australia. In fact, a chartered Qantas flight was rebranded as Modi Airways to bring in fans from Melbourne. Modi Express buses were seen as well, being chartered from Queensland to bring in Modi supporters. Both India and Australia, strong, vibrant, secular and multicultural democracies. They both have a free press, independent judicial system, English language here being an important link. There you can see these are the visuals that we're getting live right now. These are the live visuals that are coming in right now. Now, these are the events that have been scheduled for the day. In a short while from now, we will see the Indian Prime Minister address the Indian Diaspora. Many cultural events have been scheduled for the same. But that's not all up. Indian Prime Minister will also be holding bilateral talks with Australian counterpart Anthony Albanese tomorrow. Now, that will be a crucial bilateral to look forward to. Both sides are expected to build on the annual Leaders Summit held in New Delhi and discussions at the G7 Summit and Quad Leaders meeting in Hiroshima.
मोदी के साथ में ऑस्ट्रेलिया के प्रधानमंत्री एंथनी अल्बनीज मौजूद हैं। दोनों प्रधानमंत्रियों का सिडनी में ये सीधी तस्वीरें आप इस वक्त।
Let's just go across to our principal diplomatic correspondent Siddhant Sibal now, who's joining us live from Sydney. Siddhant, thank you so much for joining us. What can you tell us of the community event that's being held? We can see that Indian Prime Minister Narendra Modi has arrived here.
Well, here I'm standing in the stadium where the Indian diaspora is present in full force. The Indian Prime Minister is shortly going to arrive, and of course you can hear music, dance and of course songs as well. But essentially this is a celebration of the India Connect. Australia has a huge population of Indian diaspora. We saw that when the diaspora came to welcome the Indian Prime Minister when he arrived at his hotel, and now of course 20,000 people packed in this very stadium where I am standing with a lot of enthusiasm and patriotism. Essentially, we have seen such diaspora events in the past as well. The aim is to unite the diaspora, and how the diaspora can play an important role in, of course, spreading India's culture. We could try to speak to some of the people. Ma'am, would you like to speak to us? Would you like to speak to us? How do you see this diaspora event? The Indian Prime Minister is shortly going to arrive.
Sorry?
We are very excited. He's coming here. We are eagerly waiting to see him. So we came here early in the afternoon, around 2 o'clock. So yeah, it's a very big vibe. I see a lot of people preparing from quite a long time to have some glimpses of him, and a lot of nice decoration and preparation, a lot of performance.
Ma'am, you're from which part of Australia?
I'm from Sydney.
Okay, and you came to see the Prime Minister and take part in the diaspora. How enthusiastic you are about this?
I'm super excited, super enthusiastic to see him, and I want him to know that, you know, he's the reason why, he's a big part of my connection to India. You know, him being here is, in a way, me connecting back to India. Even though I can't be there, him being here means I can still be part of something from India.
the Indian Prime Minister is shortly going to arrive from that very gate, and you can see the members of the diaspora now waving at us. The Prime Minister has arrived now. The Indian Prime Minister has arrived in the stadium where, of course, he will be addressing the members of the diaspora. There is a lot of enthusiasm, there is a lot of security. Would you like to speak to us?
Yes. Yes. Modi! Modi! Modi!
So the usual
All
chants,
right,
usual
President,
chants
lots
you
of
hear
excitement.
when it comes to diaspora events. Would you like to say something about this diaspora event to our viewers? I mean, how did you plan to come here? What was the idea of you coming here?
Yeah, so we all wanted to see the Narendra Modi, of course.
Right.
And the excitement is building up here, the atmosphere, it's very exciting, and we're just all expecting him to come any second now, any moment, and we're just all like, we're gonna jump and shout out, Modi! Modi! So
All
we're
right.
all very excited.
Would you also like to say something? Where are you from?
Not much. We came here for like real fun to see Modi and all that.
So the number of times you can hear that roar coming here because the crowd here is eagerly, in fact, for hours waiting to get a glimpse of the Indian Prime Minister. Usually when it comes to diaspora event, they can continue for several hours. When the Prime Minister's address begins, we know that the Australian Prime Minister Anthony Albanese is also expected to join him as well. We saw in the previous diaspora event, one I can remember is in Copenhagen, where the Denmark's Prime Minister also joined the Indian Prime Minister to take part in the diaspora event. Now, we could also expect a strong focus when it comes to the conversation between the Indian Prime Minister and the Australian Prime Minister tomorrow that takes place here in Sydney regarding the people-to-people connect. Now, we know that when it comes to one aspect, that's the education bit, because a lot of Indians come to Australia for education. Australians are now keen to open universities under the new education policy of India. We know the Australians will be the first one to open campuses. They will be open campuses in India's Gujarat. So essentially, when it comes to people-to-people relationship, that forms the bedrock of this very strong relationship, and we will see the celebration of that relationship here in this stadium in a short while from now. In fact, the Prime Minister was expected to address at 6 p.m. local time. It's 6:30 p.m. local time. It's almost a delay of 30 minutes, but that's expected usually when it comes to diaspora event, which we have covered in the past, which WION has covered in the past.
Right, Siddhant. In fact, we also saw the Quad meeting that Prime Minister Anthony Albanese was joking about, that there is a capacity of some 20,000, yet he is not able to accommodate the requests of people wanting to see Prime Minister Narendra Modi. I guess that's very evident from what we can see right now. What can we expect going forward?
Well, I really can't hear you because there's a lot of chanting and sloganeering here that shows the enthusiasm of the people here. But I can ask my camera person to show you the number of people and, of course, the cameras on and, of course, how they have been waiting eagerly for the Indian Prime Minister. Now they are waiting at the gates, essentially, where the Prime Minister will be shortly coming and addressing the people. And you can hear all the, you can not only hear the chants, but you can see the people now have put their mobile phones, switch on their mobile phones with the light as well. So that is their way of showing appreciation and, of course, gratefulness when it comes to the Indian leadership and, of course, how they are associated when it comes to India. Australia approximately has over 4 lakh members of Indian diaspora. They are in almost every sector possible, you name it. It's whether it's IT, whether it is the politics. In fact, we spoke to Lisa Singh earlier today, who is an Indian Australian senator with obviously origin from Fiji as well. But the focus, of course, here is how the diaspora can play an important role, both politically and both in terms of society, in connecting the two countries. Now, when it comes to society, the Indian Australians have played an important role, a positive role that has been appreciated by the leadership here as well.
Right. Well, over to now my colleague Katie Pilbeam, who will be taking over. Siddhant, thank you so much for bringing us all the developments from Australia. We will, of course, continue to track all of the developments as and when the event progresses here.
Thank you. We're broadcasting live from London this hour. We're going to go back and join Sid and Sybil now and get more about what's been happening there, because we know that the Indian Prime Minister arrived in Sydney yesterday for the third and the final leg of his three-nation tour. So tell us a bit more about what this event is all about and what they're hoping to achieve from this visit as well.
Well, welcome from Sydney to all our viewers, I would say, when it comes to this mega event. So the Indian Prime Minister Narendra Modi is going to address Diaspora, the Indian Australian diaspora here in Sydney. We know that the Indian Prime Minister has been making sure that when it comes to his foreign visit, he addresses and meets the diaspora. That's a permanent fixture of Indian Prime Minister's travel abroad, and this time there is no difference as well. Australia has a huge Indian diaspora. In fact, many of them who I have spoken to have said that they have two hearts, one heart for India and one heart for Australia. But today it is the celebration of the relationship, how this living bridge can form a bond between India and Australia. We know approximately 4 lakh Indian Australians are there, the Indian diaspora members in Australia, and essentially they have been playing an important role, making an important and positive contribution to the society, whether it's the IT sector, whether it is the politics as well. We spoke to Lisa Singh, who is an Indo-Fijian and Australian origin senator, who wasn't a senator here. But essentially the point is that how the Indian Australians have been making an important role. There has been a strong connect. But if we talk beyond diaspora, we know as the Indian Prime Minister Narendra Modi and the Australian Prime Minister sit down for conversation tomorrow here in Sydney, focus will be on how there can be a larger connect. Free movement of people. India is keen that more Indian come to Australia. There is plan for a mobility pact to be signed between the two countries. Also, we know that when it comes to education, that has been a sector of convergence between the two countries. A lot of Indians come to Australia and of course study here. Now, under India's new education policy, there are plans to open foreign universities in India, and one of the first universities which will be opening, the foreign universities which will be opening in India will be Australian universities. They will be opening campuses in India's Gujarat, and this Highland visit by the Indian Prime Minister reaffirms the strong linkages between the two countries. Remember that the Australian Prime Minister was in India earlier this year. Now the Indian Prime Minister is here in the country. Both countries are part of the Quad. Quad is seen as the central point of the Indo-Pacific vision of the entire of India and Australia, that calls for free and open Indo-Pacific. A strong message, many would say, to China. But if I can again come back to our point of conversation, what's happening in this very stadium, we can hear the chants of the people here, the Indian Australian people who are now eagerly waiting for the Prime Minister to come. In fact, I saw a number of top Indian officials just arriving here in the hall, including the Foreign Secretary. We also know that the Australian Prime Minister Anthony Albanese is going to join the Indian Prime Minister in this mega diaspora event as well. In the past as well, we know that host leaders have joined Indian Prime Minister in diaspora events. One, for example, was when it comes to the diaspora event in Copenhagen, where the Denmark's Prime Minister joined the diaspora celebration. So this kind of celebration is not just about the diaspora, it's about linking the Indian culture, linking the country with India, whether it's Denmark, whether it's India, whether it's Japan. In fact, the Indian Prime Minister is on a 3-country visit. This is his last leg of the 3-country visit, and he started with Japan, where WION was present, and we saw how the diaspora in Hiroshima had converged to welcome the Indian Prime Minister. Then, of course, similar scenes coming from Papua New Guinea. And now, biggest of all is happening here in Sydney, where the diaspora is now waiting for the Indian Prime Minister's arrival. Approximately 20,000 people are present in this stadium, where right now I am standing, and I'm just surrounded by a sea of humanity, I would say, in terms of people who have converged to get a glimpse of the Indian Prime Minister. We have seen similar scenes in the past as well, but Sydney, I would say, is special in many senses. It's lucky as well in many senses to be the second city to witness such a grand diaspora celebration. Earlier, when the Prime Minister came, he came to Australia in 2014. That was his few first foreign trips, and the Australian rolled out the red carpet, and we saw the similar case this time as well. In fact, I can point out, and something we all know, is that the Quad Summit was expected to happen here in Sydney, but the summit got cancelled because the US President Joe Biden couldn't come because of domestic commitments. Japanese also cancelled his visit, the Japanese Prime Minister, but the Indian Prime Minister said that he will be going to Sydney, meet the Australian Prime Minister, and of course spend 2 days here. In fact, today in Sydney, we saw he's starting his day with meeting the Australian CEOs. He also met the Australian influencers, and now the diaspora is the next big focus of the Indian Prime Minister. Also tomorrow the conversation will be on the political level. Both the leaders, the Indian Prime Minister and the Australian Prime Minister, will be holding talks on a range of topics, whether it's trade, whether it's the issue of security and defense cooperation, or whether it's the issue of how both countries can converge in the wider Indo-Pacific region. That conversation is something that is also going to be a top priority for the leadership of two countries. We also expect a joint statement that will be released after that important meeting that happens in Sydney. But we can also, if talk about a wider Indo-Pacific view, is that when it comes to India-Australia relationship, we have seen similar like-minded countries also coming together with India, Japan, Australia, to make sure that when it comes to aggressive actions by countries like China, a strong message can be sent to them.
All right, Sybil, thank you so much indeed. We will be heading back to you throughout the day here on WION, so thank you for that, discussing the fact that the Indian Prime Minister Narendra Modi is indeed in Sydney for his third and final leg of his tour of the country, and just talking about the fact that the two countries have such close ties in regards to IT, politics, education, a very close relationship. Thank you. Well, we start our bulletin today with the latest development in UK politics. The former UK Deputy Prime Minister Dominic Raab says he will not stand for a seat in the next general election. Well, Raab's decision comes after he resigned as a minister following a bullying report, which said he behaved unprofessionally with his colleagues. Well, according to UK media reports, Raab is concerned about the impact the job is putting on his young family. And that's why the former UK Deputy PM says he will not seek re-election as a Member of Parliament for Esher and Walton. Well, Raab has represented the seat since 2010. Since becoming an MP, Raab has served in many ministerial roles. So in 2018, Theresa May appointed him as the Brexit Secretary. Later on, former Prime Minister Boris Johnson appointed him as the Foreign Secretary and First Secretary of State. Well, Raab has been a close ally of the current Prime Minister Rishi Sunak, from rendering his support to Sunak in last summer's Conservative leadership race. To the leadership race after Liz Truss's departure as well. Well, it will be a huge task for the Conservative Party to find a new candidate for the Surrey constituency, which is a key target for the Liberal Democrats. Now, Dominic Raab has officially joined the growing number of senior Conservative Party members who have decided not to stand in the next general election. Well, for more, we've got Dr. Nigel Fletcher joining us here, a political analyst and commentator, joining us live from London. Nigel, good to see you. So how much of a blow is this for the Conservative Party, do you think?
Well, I think the damage to the Conservative Party is the impression it gives that Dominic Raab perhaps doesn't think he's going to win the seat. I mean, of course, his letter, as we've heard reported, refers to the impact on his family and other issues. But I think the general perception of it is that, as you say, the Liberal Democrats have made it a top target seat. His majority has been declining in recent elections. There was some speculation at the last election that he might have lost it. And so, of course, you know, if you're a senior minister and you've resigned, you know, you have to look at what you're going to do next. And I think that's what Dominic Raab is doing. So I think it's a personal decision for him. But I think for the Conservative Party, he does join a growing number of Conservative MPs who are not contesting the next election. And inevitably, that gives an impression that they're not terribly confident about winning it.
Yeah, I was looking at those numbers earlier from the 2019 election, and as you just alluded to, that was very close. He only won by 2,743, and you consider that was a time when Boris Johnson obviously won an enormous majority then. So it's likely the Lib Dems will take that seat. In regards to how the Conservative Party are almost accepting defeat, it feels like, in some regards, because so many of them are leaving. They're jumping ship before they've lost the election. What can we read into that, Nigel?
Well, it's interesting to see the way the party is behaving. They do seem in some quarters to be on a sort of fatalistic journey towards defeat, because we've seen not only members of parliament choosing not to contest their seats at the next election, but also we've seen a lot of debate happening in the party about the direction of the Conservative Party. So we've seen conferences from various right-wing factions of the party talking about things the party needs to do differently, their ideas for the future of conservatism. And those are the kind of things we expect to see a party do after it's lost an election, when it's actually trying to regroup and put together an appeal for the future. Not the kind of thing you expect it to be doing whilst it's still in office. Then, of course,
on the fact that Modi is in Sydney for his trip. We have been following all of the details there. It's a 3-day trip, and the red carpet has very much been rolled out for him. Now, just talking about the relationship between the two countries, it's very tight indeed. And apart from being a member of the Quad grouping, India is also Australia's largest source of skilled migrants and the second largest source of international students. So education is very important indeed. Now, this morning, Narendra Modi, he met with the Australian CEOs, eminent personalities as well, and he will also address the Indian diaspora at this community event, we can see. Now, thousands are there. They're flocking to see the Prime Minister Modi on his visit, and this will also be attended by the Australian Prime Minister Anthony Albanese as well. The Olympic Park Arena event is attracting Modi supporters from across the nation, as you can see. Well, both India and Australia, they are strong, they're vibrant, secular, multicultural democracies, and that's what they have in common with each other. They both have a free press and an independent judicial system as well. And also the English language is a huge... The national anthem playing, as you'll be able to hopefully see the
sing advance Australia fair. Jala jala dhitara
Thank you all for standing. What an incredible crowd, what an incredible feeling. I want to welcome the Premier of New South Wales, the Honourable Chris Minns, to the stage. Please give him a warm, warm welcome.
Good evening, everybody. As Premier of New South Wales, it's my great pleasure to welcome all of you to the Kudos Bank Arena for this special event. And I, of course, particularly want to warmly welcome the Prime Minister of India, Prime Minister Modi. In a moment, I will introduce Australia's Prime Minister, Anthony Albanese, but first, take a look at the scale of tonight's event. It's huge. It's part of Australia's larger story. More and more people from India have come to Australia to call it their home. They've built businesses, started families, undertaken studies, established places of worship. You've created community while keeping your culture and traditions. We come from many different backgrounds in Australia, but we are stronger together. And tonight you can see that strength. In fact, you can hear it. Friends, the Indian diaspora is the nation's fastest growing. There are 750,000 people that have Indian ancestry in this country. And that includes the Treasurer of New South Wales, Daniel Mookhey, who swore his oath of allegiance on the Bhagavad Gita. Friends, he was the first Australian minister to do so, but he will not be the last. And so tonight we roll out the red carpet for the Prime Minister of India. We thank him for coming, but we want to pay a special tribute to all those Indian Australians.
Okay, so plenty going on there in Sydney right now. Sidant Sybil is joining us to keep us up to date. So a lot of discussions going on in terms of trade, investment, people links, renewable energy, defence and security, cooperation, lots on the table.
Well, yes, we know that focus will be on a lot of things, whether it's trade, security, defence. I'm standing inside the stadium where the Indian Prime Minister is shortly going to address the members of the diaspora. If my camera person can show you the energy in the room, and of course how the diaspora is keen to get a glimpse of the Indian Prime Minister. Every word possible, they want to cling to that word. Now, of course, the Australian Prime Minister is going to address the diaspora now. You can watch him, the Indian Prime Minister, of course, present, but the Australian Prime Minister now welcoming the Indian Prime Minister.
In just my first year as Prime Minister, which I'm
in a referendum to recognise our First Peoples in our nation's constitution later this year. And I urge my Indian Australian friends, vote yes. It is a huge pleasure to welcome Prime Minister Modi to Australia. In just my first year as Prime Minister, which I'm celebrating today, I have met the Prime Minister, my friend, 6 times. But absolutely nothing beats standing with him on a stage like this, looking out at this magnificent sea of faces. What an honour. And what a joy it is to get to welcome Prime Minister Modi here with all of you. I get to speak to some pretty big crowds as Prime Minister, but I have to say that the warmth and the energy here tonight is absolutely second to none. I said to my friend the Prime Minister before, the last time I saw someone on the stage here was Bruce Springsteen, and he didn't get the welcome that Prime Minister Modi has got.
Minister Modi is the boss. Friends, I saw that myself when I was in India in March, where he hosted me with such generosity and warmth. It was a trip full of unforgettable moments, celebrating Holi in Gujarat, laying a wreath for the great Mahatma Gandhi in New Delhi, and doing a lap, something I will never quite forget, of the incredible stadium at Ahmedabad on day one of the fourth test. Everywhere I went, I felt that deep sense of connection between the people of Australia and the people of India. It's a warmth, it is a warmth I also felt when I backpacked around India for 5 weeks in 1991. And I say this to my friends from the Australian Parliament who are here today. If you want to understand India, travel by train and video bus. And you can even hitchhike. They're very friendly. It is a connection that I feel here tonight. And once again, I feel so grateful to be a part of it. Your million-strong community has contributed so much to this country. The people here tonight, your families, your communities, will always be the lifeblood of the relationship that India and Australia share. And tonight I announce that the new Centre for Australia-India Relations will be based in Parramatta. A place that itself is a testament to the vitality of the Indian-Australian experience. One that after last night has a proud Indian Australian, Samir Pandey, as its Lord Mayor. Congratulations. Now we want to see more connections, more Australian and Indian students living and studying in each other's countries and bringing those experiences home. More business leaders and artists and families sharing your experiences and your knowledge and your ideas. Prime Minister Modi and I have just unveiled a plaque for the foundation stone of the Little India Gateway in Harris Park. But tonight, and won't that be good to visit? But tonight, as Prime Minister, I want to say thank you. You have brought the spirit of the world's biggest democracy to Australia. And you have helped make our democracy stronger and more inclusive. You've strengthened Australian society, bringing our country the benefits and riches of such a beautiful and diverse culture. And I'm so proud that you have made Australia your home, that you see your life and your future here. You make our nation and our shared communities better. You make Australia stronger. Friends, I want you to give a big Australian welcome to my dear friend, Prime Minister Narendra Modi.
नमस्ते ऑस्ट्रेलिया। ऑस्ट्रेलिया के प्रधानमंत्री और मेरे प्रिय मित्र हिज एक्सेलेंसी अल्बनीजी, ऑस्ट्रेलिया के पूर्व प्रधानमंत्री हिज एक्सेलेंसी स्कॉट मॉरिसन, न्यू साउथ वेल्स के प्रीमियर क्रिस मिन्स, फॉरेन मिनिस्टर पेनी वांग, कम्युनिकेशन मिनिस्टर मिशेल रोलेन, एनर्जी मिनिस्टर क्रिस बोवेन, लीडर ऑफ ऑपोजिशन पीटर डटन, असिस्टेंट फॉरेन मिनिस्टर टिम वॉट्स, न्यू साउथ वेल्स के उपस्थित मंत्रिमंडल के सभी आदरणीय सदस्य, पैरामाटा से संसद सदस्य डॉक्टर एंड्रयू चार्ल्टन, यहां उपस्थित ऑस्ट्रेलिया के सभी संसद सदस्य, मेयर, डिप्टी मेयर, काउंसिलर्स और ऑस्ट्रेलिया में रह रहे प्रवासी भारतीय जो आज इतनी विशाल संख्या में उपस्थित हुए हैं, आप सबको मेरा नमस्कार। First of all, I acknowledge the traditional custodians of the land that we are meeting here on today. I pay my respect to their elders, past, present, and emerging. I also celebrate all First Nations people who may be with us today. Friends, मैं जब 2014 में आया था तो आपसे एक वादा किया था। वादा ये था कि आपको फिर भारत के किसी प्रधानमंत्री का 28 साल तक इंतजार नहीं करना पड़ेगा। तो लीजिए, यहां सिडनी में इस ऐना में मैं फिर हाजिर हूं और मैं अकेला नहीं आया हूं। प्रधानमंत्री अल्बनीजी भी मेरे साथ आए हैं। मिस्टर प्राइम मिनिस्टर, अपने बहुत व्यस्त कार्यक्रम में से हम सभी के लिए आपने समय निकाला है। ये हम भारतीयों के प्रति आपके स्नेह को दर्शाता है। आपने जो अभी कहा वो दिखाता है कि ऑस्ट्रेलिया के मन में भारत के प्रति कितना प्रेम है। इसी वर्ष मुझे प्रधानमंत्री जी का भारत की धरती पर अहमदाबाद में स्वागत करने का अवसर मिला था। आज उन्होंने यहां लिटिल इंडिया के फाउंडेशन स्टोर को अनवील करने में मेरा साथ दिया है, मैं उनका बहुत बहुत आभार व्यक्त करता हूं। थैंक यू माय फ्रेंड एंथनी। ये लिटिल इंडिया ऑस्ट्रेलिया के विकास में भारतीय समुदाय के योगदान का भी एक रिकॉग्निशन है। मैं न्यू साउथ वेल्स के प्रीमियर, पैरामाटा शहर के मेयर, डिप्टी मेयर और काउंसिलर्स को इस विशेष सम्मान के लिए धन्यवाद देना चाहता हूं। साथियों, मुझे खुशी है कि न्यू साउथ वेल्स में प्रवासी भारतीय समुदाय से कई लोग सार्वजनिक जीवन में सक्रिय भागीदारी कर रहे हैं, अपनी पहचान बना रहे हैं। वर्तमान न्यू साउथ वेल्स की सरकार में डिप्टी प्रीमियर, प्रूकार, ट्रेजरर डेनियल मुखी बड़ा कंट्रीब्यूशन कर रहे हैं। और कल ही भाई समीर पांडे पैरामाटा के लॉर्ड मेयर चुने गए हैं। मैं सबका अभिनंदन करता हूं, बहुत बहुत बधाई देता हूं। साथियों, आज जब पैरामाटा में यह सब हो रहा है, तभी ये जानकारी भी आई है कि पश्चिमी ऑस्ट्रेलिया के पर्थ शहर में भारतीय सैनिक नयन सिंह सैलानी के नाम पर सैलानी एवेन्यू बनाया गया है। उन्होंने पहले विश्व युद्ध में ऑस्ट्रेलिया की फौज के लिए लड़ते हुए वीर गति प्राप्त की थी। इस सम्मान के लिए मैं पश्चिमी ऑस्ट्रेलिया के नेतृत्व का आदरपूर्वक अभिनंदन करता हूं। साथियों, एक समय था जब कहा जाता था कि भारत ऑस्ट्रेलिया के संबंधों को 3C डिफाइन करते हैं। ऐसा पहले कहा जाता था। ये कौन से 3C हैं? कॉमनवेल्थ, क्रिकेट और करी। इसके बाद कहा गया कि भारत ऑस्ट्रेलिया के संबंध 3D पर आधारित है। डेमोक्रेसी, डायस्पोरा और दोस्ती। कुछ लोगों ने यह भी कहा कि भारत ऑस्ट्रेलिया के संबंध 3E पर आधारित है। एनर्जी, इकोनॉमी और एजुकेशन। यानी कभी C, कभी D, कभी E। अलग अलग कालखंड में ये बात संभवतः सही भी रही है, लेकिन भारत और ऑस्ट्रेलिया के ऐतिहासिक संबंधों का विस्तार इससे कहीं ज्यादा बड़ा है। और जानते हैं, इन सारे संबंधों का सबसे बड़ा आधार क्या है? जानते हैं? जी नहीं। सबसे बड़ा आधार है म्यूचुअल ट्रस्ट और म्यूचुअल रिस्पेक्ट। ये म्यूचुअल ट्रस्ट और म्यूचुअल रिस्पेक्ट सिर्फ भारत ऑस्ट्रेलिया के डिप्लोमेटिक रिश्तों से विकसित नहीं हुआ है। इसकी असली वजह है, इसकी असली ताकत है आप ऑस्ट्रेलिया में रहने वाले हर एक भारतीय। आप उसकी असली ताकत है। इसकी असली वजह है ऑस्ट्रेलिया के 2.5 करोड़ से ज्यादा सिटीजन्स। साथियों, हमारे बीच भौगोलिक दूरी जरूर है, लेकिन हिंद महासागर हमें आपस में जोड़ता है। हमारी जीवन शैलियां भले अलग अलग हो, लेकिन अब योगा ये भी हमें जोड़ता है। क्रिकेट से तो हम ना जाने कब से जुड़े हुए हैं, लेकिन अब टेनिस और फिल्में भी हमें जोड़ रही है। हमारे यहां खाना बनाने का तरीका भले अलग अलग है, लेकिन अब मास्टर शेफ हमें जोड़ता है। हमारे यहां पर्व त्योहार भले अलग अलग मनाए जाते हैं, लेकिन हम जुड़े हुए हैं दिवाली की रौनक से, बैसाखी के जश्न से। हमारे यहां भाषाएं भले अलग अलग बोली जाती हो, लेकिन हम जुड़े हुए हैं मलयालम, तमिल, तेलुगु, पंजाबी, हिंदी भाषाएं पढ़ाने वाले इतने सारे स्कूलों से। साथियों, ऑस्ट्रेलिया के लोग, यहां के निवासी इतने विशाल हृदय के हैं, दिल के इतने अच्छे और सच्चे हैं कि भारत की इस विविधता को खुले दिल से स्वीकारते हैं। और यही वजह है कि पैरा माटा स्क्वायर किसी के लिए परमात्मा चौक बन जाता है। विक्रम स्ट्रीट भी विक्रम स्ट्रीट के रूप में मशहूर हो जाती है, और हैरिस पार्क कई लोगों के लिए हरीश पार्क हो जाता है। वैसे मैंने सुना है कि हैरिस पार्क में चटका की चाट, जयपुर स्वीट्स की जलेबी, उसका तो कोई जवाब ही नहीं है। मेरी आप सबसे रिक्वेस्ट है, आप लोग कभी मेरे मित्र पीएम एल्बेनीज़ी को भी वहां जरूर ले जाइएगा। और साथियों, जब खाने की बात चली है और चाट की बात चली है, तो लखनऊ का नाम आना भी स्वाभाविक ही है। मैंने सुना है सिडनी के पास लखनऊ नाम की जगह भी है, लेकिन मुझे पता नहीं वहां भी चाट मिलती है क्या। अच्छा, यहां भी तो शायद दिल्ली के पास वाले लखनऊ के लोग होंगे ही होंगे, है क्या? वाह, वाकई दिल्ली स्ट्रीट, बॉम्बे स्ट्रीट, कश्मीर एवेन्यू, मालाबार एवेन्यू जैसी कितनी ही सड़कें यहां ऑस्ट्रेलिया में आपको भारत से जोड़े रखती है। मुझे बताया गया कि अब तो ग्रेटर सिडनी में इंडिया परेड भी शुरू होने जा रही है। मुझे जानकर भी बहुत अच्छा लगा कि यहां आप सबने आजादी का अमृत महोत्सव भी बहुत धूमधाम से मनाया है। यहां की कई सारी सिटी काउंसिल में बहुत सारे कार्यक्रम किए गए हैं। सिडनी ओपेरा हाउस जब तिरंगे की रोशनी से सराबोर हुआ तो यहां हर भारतीय का दिल खुश हो गया। हिंदुस्तान में भी जय जयकार हो रहा था। और इसके लिए मैं न्यू साउथ वेल्स गवर्नमेंट का विशेष तौर पर आभार व्यक्त करता हूं। साथियों, हमारे क्रिकेट के रिश्तों को भी 75 वर्ष पूरे हो गए हैं। क्रिकेट की फील्ड पर मुकाबला जितना रोचक होता है, उतनी ही गहरी ऑफ द फील्ड हमारी दोस्ती है। इस बार तो ऑस्ट्रेलिया की अनेक विमेन क्रिकेट प्लेयर भी पहली बार भारत में आईपीएल खेलने आई थी। और साथियों, ऐसा नहीं है कि हम सिर्फ सुख के ही साथी हैं। अच्छा दोस्त तो सुख का तो साथी होता है, दुख का भी साथी होता है। पिछले साल जब महान शेन वॉन का निधन हुआ तो ऑस्ट्रेलिया के साथ कोटि कोटि भारतीयों ने भी शोक मनाया। ये ऐसा था जैसे हमने अपना कोई खो दिया है। साथियों, आप सभी यहां ऑस्ट्रेलिया में हैं, यहां के विकास को देख रहे हैं। आप सभी का एक सपना रहा है कि हमारा भारत भी विकसित राष्ट्र बने। है ना आपका सपना? है ना आपका सपना? है ना आपका सपना? जो सपना आपके दिल में है, वो सपना मेरे दिल में भी है। ये मेरा भी सपना है। 140 करोड़ भारतीयों का सपना है। साथियों, भारत के पास सामर्थ्य की कमी नहीं है। भारत के पास संसाधनों की कमी भी नहीं है। आज दुनिया की सबसे बड़ी और सबसे युवा टैलेंट फैक्ट्री जिस देश में है, वो है सही जवाब दे रहे हैं आप, वो है इंडिया। मैं ये बात फिर दोहरा रहा हूं, आज दुनिया की सबसे बड़ी और सबसे युवा टैलेंट फैक्ट्री जिस देश में है वो है और अब मैं आपके सामने ऐसे ही कुछ फैक्ट रखूंगा और आपसे सही उत्तर जानना चाहूंगा, ठीक है? रेडी? कोरोना की इस ग्लोबल पैंडेमिक में जिस देश ने दुनिया का सबसे तेज वैक्सीनेशन प्रोग्राम चलाया, वो देश है आज जो देश दुनिया की फास्टेस्ट ग्रोइंग लार्ज इकोनॉमी है, वो है आज जो देश दुनिया में नंबर 1 स्मार्टफोन डेटा कंज्यूमर है, वो देश है आज जो देश फिनटेक एडॉप्शन रेट में नंबर 1 है, वो देश है आज जो देश मिल्क प्रोडक्शन के मामले में दुनिया में नंबर 1 है, वो देश है आज जो देश इंटरनेट यूजर्स की संख्या में दुनिया में नंबर 2 पर है, वो है आज जो देश दुनिया का सेकंड लार्जेस्ट मोबाइल मैन्युफैक्चरर है, वो देश है आज जो देश राइस, व्हीट, शुगर केन प्रोडक्शन के मामले में दुनिया में नंबर 2 पर है, वो है आज जो देश फ्रूट और वेजिटेबल प्रोडक्शन में दुनिया में नंबर 2 पर है, वो है आज जिस देश में दुनिया का तीसरा सबसे बड़ा स्टार्टअप इकोसिस्टम है, वो है दुनिया का तीसरा सबसे बड़ा ऑटोमोबाइल मार्केट जिस देश में है, वो देश है दुनिया का तीसरा सबसे बड़ा सिविल एविएशन मार्केट जिस देश में है, वो देश है और अब जो देश अगले 25 साल में विकसित होने के लक्ष्य के साथ आगे बढ़ रहा है, वो देश है साथियों, आज IMF भारत को ग्लोबल इकोनॉमी का ब्राइट स्पॉट मानता है। वर्ल्ड बैंक का विश्वास है कि ग्लोबल हेडविंड्स को अगर कोई चुनौती दे रहा है तो वो भारत है। आज दुनिया के कई देशों में बैंकिंग सिस्टम पर संकट है, लेकिन दूसरी तरफ भारत के बैंकों की मजबूती की आज चारों तरफ प्रशंसा हो रही है। दुनिया में 100 साल में आए सबसे बड़े संकट के बीच भारत ने बीते वर्ष रिकॉर्ड एक्सपोर्ट किया है। आज हमारा फॉरेक्स रिजर्व नई बुलंदियां छू रहा है। फ्रेंड्स, भारत ग्लोबल गुड के लिए कैसे काम कर रहा है, इसका उदाहरण हमारा डिजिटल स्टैक है। आप सभी भारत के फिनटेक रिवॉल्यूशन से भली भांति परिचित है। आपको याद होगा, जब मैं 2014 में यहां आया था, तब मैंने आपसे एक सपना साझा किया था। मेरा वो सपना था कि भारत में गरीब से गरीब का अपना बैंक खाता हो। आपको गर्व होगा दोस्तों, आपको गर्व होगा कि पिछले 9 वर्ष में हमने करीब 50 करोड़ भारतीयों के, यानी करीब 500 मिलियन बैंक अकाउंट खोले हैं। और सिर्फ बैंक अकाउंट खोलना ही हमारी सफलता हम वहां अटकते नहीं है। इसने भारत में पब्लिक सर्विस डिलीवरी के पूरे इकोसिस्टम को ट्रांसफॉर्म कर दिया। हमने जनधन बैंक अकाउंट, मोबाइल फोन और आधार आईडी की एक जैम ट्रिनिटी, JAM ट्रिनिटी बनाई है। आप सोचिए, इसे एक क्लिक पर करोड़ों देशवासियों तक डायरेक्ट बेनिफिट ट्रांसफर DBT संभव हुआ। और आपको और खुशी होगी, बीते 9 वर्षों में, यह आंकड़ा भी आपको बहुत आनंद देगा, बीते 9 वर्षों में 28 लाख करोड़ रुपए, यानी 500 बिलियन ऑस्ट्रेलियन डॉलर से भी ज्यादा सीधे जरूरतमंदों के बैंक अकाउंट में भेजे गए हैं। कोरोना के समय में बहुत से देशों को अपने नागरिकों को पैसे भेजने में मुश्किल आई थी, लेकिन भारत उन देशों में था जो एक क्लिक पर यह काम पलकों में कर लिया था। यूनिवर्सल पब्लिक इंटरफेस यानी यूपीआई ने भारत में फाइनेंशियल इंक्लूजन को नई ऊंचाई पर पहुंचा दिया है। आज दुनिया के 40% रियल टाइम डिजिटल पेमेंट्स अकेले भारत में होते हैं। आप अभी भारत आए होंगे तो देखा होगा, आज फल, सब्जी या पानी पूरी के ठेले हो या फिर चाय की दुकान, सब जगह डिजिटल ट्रांजैक्शन हो रहा है। साथियों, भारत का ये डिजिटल रिवॉल्यूशन सिर्फ फिनटेक तक सीमित नहीं है। भारत आधुनिक व्यवस्थाएं बना रहा है, लोगों की ईज ऑफ लिविंग बढ़ा रहा है। इसका एक उदाहरण भारत का डिजी लॉकर है। इसमें ड्राइविंग लाइसेंस से लेकर डिग्री और प्रॉपर्टी के पेपर्स तक जो भी सरकार इशू करती है वो इस डिजिटल लॉकर में जनरेट होते हैं। करीब सैकड़ों तरह के डॉक्यूमेंट्स डिजिटल लॉकर में रिफ्लेक्ट होते हैं। आपको फिजिकल कॉपी स्टोर करने की जरूरत नहीं है, बस एक पासवर्ड काफी है। और इससे 15 करोड़ से ज्यादा यानी 150 मिलियन से भी ज्यादा भारतीय जुड़ चुके हैं। इस तरह के कितने ही डिजिटल प्लेटफॉर्म आज हर भारतीय को पावरफुल बना रहे हैं, ताकतवर बना रहे हैं। साथियों, आज भारत के हर कदम, हर उपलब्धियों के बारे में दुनिया जानना चाहती है। आज की दुनिया जिस वर्ल्ड ऑर्डर की तरफ जा रही है, जिन संभावनाओं को तलाश रही है, उसमें ये स्वाभाविक भी है। भारत हजारों वर्षों की जीवंत सभ्यता है। भारत मदर ऑफ डेमोक्रेसी है। हमने समय के अनुसार खुद को ढाला है, लेकिन अपने मूल सिद्धांतों पर, फंडामेंटल्स पर हमेशा टिके रहे हैं। हम राष्ट्र को भी एक परिवार के रूप में देखते हैं और विश्व को भी एक परिवार मानते हैं। वसुधैव कुटुंबकम। और इसलिए जब भारत अपनी G20 प्रेसिडेंसी की थीम तय करता है तो कहता है अपने आदर्शों को जीने का उसका स्वभाव देखिए। G20 प्रेसिडेंसी में भारत कहता है वन अर्थ, वन फैमिली, वन फ्यूचर। जब भारत पर्यावरण की रक्षा के लिए सोलर एनर्जी के बड़े लक्ष्य तय करता है तो कहता है वन सन, वन वर्ल्ड, वन ग्रिड। जब भारत वैश्विक समुदाय के स्वस्थ रहने की कामना करता है तो कहता है वन अर्थ, वन हेल्थ। भारत वो देश है जिसने कोरोना के संकट में दुनिया के 150 से ज्यादा देशों को उस संकट की घड़ी में दवाइयां भेजी। भारत वो देश है जिसने 100 से अधिक देशों को मुफ्त वैक्सीन भेजकर करोड़ों करोड़ों लोगों का जीवन बचाया। कोरोना के समय में आपने भी यहां जिस सेवा भावना से काम किया वही हमारी संस्कृति की विशेषता है। आज शहीदों के सरताज पंचम सिख गुरु श्री गुरु अर्जुन देव जी का शहीदी पर्व है। हमें गुरु जी के जीवन से सभी की सेवा करने शिक्षा मिलती है। गुरु अर्जुन देव जी ने ही दसंध प्रणाली शुरू की थी। इसी प्रेरणा से कोरोना के दौरान भी कितने ही गुरुद्वारों के लंगर ने यहां लोगों की मदद की। इसी दौर में कितने ही मंदिरों की रसोई यहां पीड़ितों के लिए खुल गई। ऑस्ट्रेलिया में रहकर पढ़ाई कर रहे स्टूडेंट्स भी बड़ी संख्या में लोगों की मदद के लिए आगे आए। विभिन्न सामाजिक संगठनों ने भी इस दौरान बहुत लोगों की मदद की। भारतीय कहीं भी रहे, एक मानवीय भाव उनमें समाहित रहता है। साथियों, मानवता के हित में ऐसे ही कार्यों के कारण आज भारत को फोर्स ऑफ ग्लोबल गुड कहा जा रहा है। जहां कहीं भी कोई आपदा होती है, भारत मदद के लिए तैयार मिलता है। जब भी कोई संकट आता है, भारत समाधान के लिए तत्पर रहता है। आज चाहे इंटरनेशनल सोलर अलायंस के द्वारा सौर ऊर्जा का उपयोग बढ़ाना हो, चाहे आपसी सहयोग के माध्यम से डिजास्टर रिजिलिएंट इंफ्रास्ट्रक्चर तैयार करना हो, चाहे इंटरनेशनल बिग कैट अलायंस को नेतृत्व देना हो, भारत ने हमेशा अलग अलग देशों को एकजुट करने के लिए एक बाइंडिंग फोर्स की तरह काम किया है। अभी अभी जब तुर्की में भूकंप ने तबाही मचाई, तब भारत ने ऑपरेशन दोस्त के द्वारा मदद का हाथ बढ़ाया। भारत अपने हितों को सबके हितों से जोड़कर देखता है। सबका साथ, सबका विकास, सबका विश्वास और सबका प्रयास, ये हमारी डोमेस्टिक गवर्नेंस का भी आधार है और ग्लोबल गवर्नेंस के लिए भी यही विजन है। साथियों, आज भारत और ऑस्ट्रेलिया के बीच स्ट्रेटेजिक पार्टनरशिप निरंतर गहरी हो रही है। हाल में ही हमने इकोनॉमिक कोऑपरेशन और ट्रेड एग्रीमेंट ECTA एकता साइन किया है। अनुमान है इससे दोनों के बीच ट्रेड अगले 5 वर्ष में 2 गुने से अधिक हो जाएगा। अब हम कॉम्प्रिहेंसिव इकोनॉमिक कोऑपरेशन एग्रीमेंट पर काम कर रहे हैं। हम रिजिलिएंट और रिलायबल सप्लाई चेन्स का निर्माण कर रहे हैं। इससे दोनों देशों के बिजनेस को बल मिलेगा ही, दुनिया को भी नया विश्वास मिलेगा। आज भारत और ऑस्ट्रेलिया के बीच कई डायरेक्ट फ्लाइट्स हैं। बीते वर्षों में फ्लाइट्स की संख्या बढ़ी है। आने वाले दिनों में इनकी संख्या और बढ़ेगी। एक दूसरे की डिग्रियों को मान्यता देने को लेकर भी दोनों देश आगे बढ़े हैं और इससे हमारे स्टूडेंट्स को बहुत लाभ होगा। माइग्रेशन एंड मोबिलिटी पार्टनरशिप एग्रीमेंट पर भी सहमति बनी है। इससे हमारे स्किल्ड प्रोफेशनल्स के लिए ऑस्ट्रेलिया आना और यहां काम करना आसान होगा। और साथियों, आज जब मैं आपके बीच आया हूं तो एक घोषणा भी करने जा रहा हूं। ब्रिस्बेन में भारतीय समुदाय की बहुत समय से जो मांग थी, अब उसे पूरा किया जाएगा। जल्द ही ब्रिस्बेन में भारत का एक नया काउंसलेट खोला जाएगा। फ्रेंड, भारत और ऑस्ट्रेलिया की गहरी होती पार्टनरशिप मां भारती में आस्था रखने वाले प्रत्येक व्यक्ति को सशक्त करेगी। आपके पास टैलेंट है, अपनी स्किल की ताकत है और साथ ही अपने कल्चरल वैल्यूज भी है। ये वैल्यूज आपको ऑस्ट्रेलिया के लोगों के साथ घुल मिलकर रहने में बड़ी भूमिका निभाते हैं। मैं कल ही पापुआ न्यू गिनी से आया हूं। वहां मैंने स्थानीय भाषा में तमिल साहित्य तिरुकुरल के अनुवाद का लोकार्पण किया। ये अनुवाद वहां भारतीय मूल के एक स्थानीय गवर्नर ने किया है। एक जीता जागता उदाहरण है कि कैसे हम विदेश में रहते हुए भी अपनी जड़ों पर गर्व करते रहें, जड़ों से जुड़े रहे। आप भी यहां ऑस्ट्रेलिया में भारतीय संस्कृति की खुशबू फैला रहे हैं। आप ऑस्ट्रेलिया में भारत के कल्चरल एम्बेसडर हैं, भारत के ब्रांड एम्बेसडर्स हैं। साथियों, मैं मेरी बात समाप्त करने से पहले आपसे कुछ मांगना चाहता हूं। देंगे? आवाज जरा धीमी हो गई। देंगे? पक्का? प्रॉमिस? मैं आपसे ये मांग रहा हूं और आपसे आग्रह करूंगा कि आप जब भी भारत आए, अपने साथ कोई न कोई ऑस्ट्रेलियाई मित्र और उनके परिवार को भी साथ लेकर के आए। इससे उन्हें भारत को समझने का, जानने का और ज्यादा बेहतर मौका मिलेगा। आप इतनी बड़ी तादाद में आए, लंबे अरसे के बाद आपको मिलने का मौका मिला। आप सब बहुत स्वस्थ रहिए, खुश रहिए, आनंद से रहिए। एक बार फिर से आप सभी का बहुत बहुत धन्यवाद। मेरे साथ बोलिए, भारत माता की, भारत माता की, भारत माता की, भारत माता की। बहुत बहुत धन्यवाद।
back.
Now, the best was probably kept for the last. Indian Prime Minister Narendra Modi is in Australia for the last leg of his tour, and the Indian diaspora has welcomed the Prime Minister with cheers and a huge roar. The visuals on your screens are coming from just moments after his address to the Indian diaspora in Sydney. And during his speech, Narendra Modi announced that a new Indian consulate will be constructed in Australia's Brisbane city. He has also emphasized on stronger India-Australia ties. He thanked Albanese for attending the event with him, to which the Australian counterpart referred to the Indian Prime Minister as the boss. Now, our principal diplomatic correspondent Sadan Sibul is joining us live from Ground Zero. Sadan, if you can hear me, we just saw another show of power by the Indian diaspora, this time in Sydney, of course. How are you gauging the reaction on the ground?
PM Modi is the boss. That's the message by Australian Prime Minister, and that is going to stick for a long time. I'm still in the stadium where the Prime Minister has just left and the diaspora is present in full force. Let us try to speak to some of the members of the diaspora. Sir, would you like to speak to us? How do you see the Prime Minister's speech? He just concluded his speech and left.
It was wonderful, certainly. He mentioned about all the achievements of India in the last couple of years, apart from the cooperation with India and Australia will be increasing. The last message was certainly wonderful. If we can get one Australian people every year with us to India, that was something really wonderful to take away. So that will help us to share our culture and everything.
Ma'am, the Prime Minister made an important announcement saying that India will open its consulate in Brisbane. Your first reaction to this?
I'm so excited for it. I can't wait to see it.
It's going to be good for the local people who are staying there. They have to travel all the way to Sydney, so it is really going to help them for sure. Yeah.
Really going to help them is the word when it comes to the Brisbane announcement. There are more members of the Indian diaspora. Would you like to speak to us? How do you see Indian Prime Minister's address here?
I think it's really pride for us, and it was very. We are a big fan of the Indian Prime Minister Narendra Modi. We love to see them as many as we can. I think it was. We are a big fan of him. Love you, Narendra Modi. Thank you very much.
If my camera person can pan and show the number of people who are present here. Approximately 20,000 people are present. In fact, many of them are now leaving just to get their snacks. Let's speak to more and more members of the Indian diaspora. Ma'am, would you like to speak to us? Any comments when it comes to the entire the speech made by the Indian Prime Minister?
It was an excellent speech, and we got some insights into what's going to transpire, the collaboration and all those agreements, the deals and all that. So it's all good news. So we look forward to that.
Okay, good news. You would like to add something, sir?
Yes, we are very happy that Modi ji has come to a place like Sydney for us, and we are very happy about all the things Modi ji is doing for our country. We are proud of him. We love him. Har Har Modi. Gar Gar Modi.
As a research scientist, this is a pretty good one. I'm sure that in the area of research and development, this would be a stepping stone ahead for a strategic alliance between Australia and India, so that we can take a good development further for next decade and upcoming decades until 2047.
So a lot of positive comments regarding the speech made by the Indian Prime Minister, and of course we know that there have been such events in the past and there have been important announcements. One of course was the change in the name essentially when it comes to Harris Park, which is an area which has a lot of Indians present, but more and more Indian Australians are coming. Sir, would you like to, ma'am, would you like to speak to us about the address made by the Indian Prime Minister?
We are glad that we got chance to see Narendra Modi live, and we are very happy about it. Thank you so much.
And you are accompanied by your family here?
Yeah, I'm here with my family. My entire family and friends are here, and we enjoyed the night today.
Let's try to speak to other members of the Indian diaspora who are present here. Would you like to speak to us on the address made by the Indian Prime Minister? He made a lot of announcements as well. How do you see the announcements made by the Prime Minister?
Sorry, what was your question?
My question is, how do you see the speech by the Indian Prime Minister here at the diaspora event?
Oh, it was wonderful. Very, very good experience. Very wonderful speech. I hope he comes again next time.
The place is still packed and there's a lot of chanting still, so there's a lot of commotion, to use the word, but a positive one. There are more members of the diaspora. Ma'am, would you like to talk about the speech made by the Indian Prime Minister and especially the announcement made regarding the opening up of the Indian Consulate in Brisbane?
I was so inspired, honestly. For someone like, Narendra Modi ji to come, should I come up? Yeah, for him, for the Prime Minister to actually tell every single thing where India is economically, he said for so many things, India is first, second. That was so inspiring. Usually when I was growing up, I used to always think, why can't India be like another, Western country? But this one, when he tells, it brings up so much pride in us, okay? And he has really thought that, okay, there's a lot of Indian population in Brisbane, so he has opened up the consulate. So that's a really good decision. Thanks.
Proud to be an Indian. Perhaps your shirt speaks more than perhaps you will be speaking, but how do you see the speech of the Indian Prime Minister?
Oh, absolutely delighted. I think it's a once-in-a-lifetime opportunity. Being a big Modi fan, it's so proud to be an Indian. In so many areas, the development that has happened in the last 10 years has been absolutely astonishing. And I really like the ask that Modi actually made of bringing one Australian mate back to India when we visit the country. I think it will develop tourism in India. It will develop India's image globally. So I really appreciate that as well. Yeah.
A lot of appreciation by the members of the diaspora here when it comes to the speech made by the Indian Prime Minister. Essentially, we know that there are a lot of Indian diaspora members here in Australia, and they play an important role in connecting the people of India and people of Australia. In fact, there are a number of Indian Australians who are playing an important part in the Australian society, including one highlighted by the Indian Prime Minister saying that how amid the COVID crisis, the gurdwaras and the temples were opened so that they can help the people who were impacted by the COVID pandemic. Back to the studio.
Absolutely, Siddhant. Thank you for getting us all those live reactions just after Indian Prime Minister Narendra Modi addressed the Indian diaspora in Sydney, of course. People seem very happy, especially with the announcement of the Indian consulate that is going to open in Brisbane shortly. Thank you for all the insights, and we will be wrapping up this session of the broadcast. More coming up on the other side.